Coming up next on TITV, scrimmage number 2 is in the books. How did the Tide's final game-like tune-up go? Also ahead, he came to Alabama and left before ever playing in a game, as wearing crimson still in Alfie Hill's future. Tider Insider TV begins right now.
Go inside the Crimson Tide. Tider Insider TV with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris.
We got so many issues with our young guys, you know. We're still trying to get them to forget about what they were at the prom, you know, last spring, and understand that they're in college now. You know, it's almost like when you take accounting, you take accounting 1, 2, and 3 if you're an accounting major. You know, we're in pre-accounting right now.
I took accounting 0. I don't know about you. Nick Saban talking after Alabama's second scrimmage about the young guys on special teams and defense trying to grow up in a hurry. Good evening, everybody, and welcome in to Tider Insider TV, presented by Buffalo Rock Bottling Company. Today we're going to enjoy Pepsi. I lost a couple pounds, so I decided to leave the diet off. Alongside Rodney Orr from TiderInsider.com, I'm Gary Harris. We'll get to that scrimmage in just a moment, but first, we'll start out on the recruiting trail, and it's big news. The 2011 signing date is still more than 5 months away, but Alabama already working on 2012, and the first commitment for the class of 2012, one of the top defensive back prospects in the country for that class. Although as far as his high school is concerned, Arnold High School in Panama City Beach, Florida, he's a lot more than just a safety.
Well, too bad he's not in the class of 2011, because Alabama could probably use him very soon. And Eddie Williams, one of the top, as Gary mentioned, safeties in the country from Panama City Beach, Florida, Arnold High School, and again, an outstanding player, turned down Florida, Florida State, Notre Dame. So Gary, clearly he's one of the top rising juniors in the country. And
you know, I was reading your story on TiderInsider.com, and you talked with this high school coach and some others, and I thought it was interesting. You know, he's been leaning to Alabama for some time. They admitted that. But watching the all-access specials on ESPN kind of put him over the top. He said he got jacked up and decided to go ahead and pull the trigger after watching that.
Of course, those being shown last week, all last week on ESPN. That was the talk of Panama City Beach, Arnold High School down there. All last week, Eddie got fired up about it. But you mentioned, Gary, he has been leaning to Alabama for some time. In fact, last month, you and I talked about he may be the first guy that commits in the 2012 class after he had camped here at Alabama and named Alabama his leader. But, you know, again, Alabama's been in the driver's seat for quite some time.
And real quickly before we move on to the scrimmage, I know you don't rate recruits, but based on what you know about him and his potential and already the fact that he's a great player, he truly will be a national recruit in that class of 2012.
Again, Notre Dame was in there, Florida, Florida State. Anytime you go into the state of Florida and take a player that Florida and Florida State definitely want, that's big time. Now remember, Mickey Andrews was a great defensive coordinator. He saw a lot of great players in his time at Florida State. First time he saw Eddie Williams as a 9th grader, he said this guy's an NFL first-round pick as a safety.
Wow, that is high praise. Okay, now from players that will wear the crimson in the future to guys that are wearing crimson right now. Alabama only holding 2 full scrimmages during fall camp, and the last one was this past Saturday. And now we get limited access. We basically get to watch some warm-ups, some stuff that you're watching right here on tape, our Todd Hoyer videoed, and then they get down to real business. But based on the stats, based on this scrimmage, the way it was run, Rodney, the good news is there was much improvement for the defense, and that is an area that, quite frankly, needed to be improved on from the first scrimmage.
Yeah, apparently a lot more intensity from what we heard from the defensive side of the team. And, you know, Gary, I kind of expected them to perform a lot better. And, you know, we talked about this last week that, you know, although we didn't get to watch the first scrimmage, it was very likely that they weren't allowed to do some of the things that they would normally do in a game, maybe blitz, you know, stunt, do different things maybe that they would normally do. So that certainly played into the hands of the offense.
Well, you know, basically the season's here. You'll have a Saturday, one last Saturday without football, then the next Saturday, September 4th, the Tide kicks it off against San Jose State. We can only go by what Coach Saban says, but based on the youth on defense and what he has said to this point, do you feel like, in your opinion, they're where he would like them to be, or a little behind, a little ahead? Just your
Probably
feel.
not. You're never where a coach wants you to be. There's no question about that. And you know, with all the youth and the inexperience that they have, and we've talked about it for months, the inexperience in the secondary, there's no way really, I don't think, Gary, that they can be very far along, and especially when you consider the injuries. So they haven't had an opportunity to develop that cohesiveness. But again, a lot of great athletes. And I think that as time goes on, you're going to see this secondary mesh together well.
Some good stuff with Eddie Williams, some good stuff with the scrimmage, but it's not all good news at Alabama, unfortunately. Last week it was announced that freshman linebacker Alfie Hill had been ruled ineligible to participate this season. UA Compliance Director Mike Ward issued a statement saying that the Eligibility Center declined to accept certain courses in their certification process. Coach Nick Saban was obviously not happy with the decision since Alfie had already been practicing. He says the team will appeal the ruling, but Coach says the bigger issue here is consistency. In other words, everyone will play by the rules, but they need to really know what the rules are first.
You can't allow a guy to take courses that when he takes them, he feels like they're okay, and then they're not okay. I mean, that's not fair. All right, now, I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong or the NCAA did anything wrong. I'm just saying it needs to be clearly defined, all right, so that everybody understands what needs to be done.
And after that story broke, one of Hill's high school assistant coaches was quoted as saying Hill's time at Alabama is over and that the linebacker will transfer to East Carolina. The coach told the Mobile Press Register, quote, he's going to be a Pirate. His career at Alabama is over. Once they found out he was a non-qualifier, they did not wait to see if the NCAA would overturn. They had 4 days, but they did not wait. They already assigned his scholarship to someone else. And that's probably not exactly correct, but obviously you have to move somebody in. And Harrison Jones was brought in. He was going to Gray Shirt, came back in from Memphis. But the whole Alfie Hill situation is disappointing, and it does seem unfair the way the NCAA handled it. At the same time, you know, he didn't try to do anything to get back in school here at Alabama.
No, he didn't, Gary. And, you know, Alabama could have possibly waited 4 days. They weren't going to get that overturned in 4 days. There's no question about that. So they had to move forward. And as far as Alfie Hill's concerned and the assistant coach there at the school, he might, you know, rethink about that because Alfie was already talking about going to East Carolina before he left Tuscaloosa. So, you know, Alfie could have waited 4 days and seen what happened as well. But, you know, he's already determined that I think that's where he wants to go. He could have gone out to a junior college, or any junior college actually, but Arizona Western, I know that they really would have liked to have had him. And, you know, he just decided that's not what he wanted to do, apparently. So he's got to get eligible, sit out a year, and we'll see what happens.
Well, good luck to Alfie wherever he winds up. Here's something you're not going to believe. Mark Ingram's a Heisman Trophy winner. The HeismanPundit.com publisher Chris Houston says he's got no chance to win it next year. He doesn't even list Ingram as one of the top 10 candidates or 6 guys to watch. So in other words, he's not in the top 16, and he's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. Houston says his logic is this: no sophomore has ever repeated, and there's only been one repeat winner in the history of the trophy. That was Archie Griffin, his junior and senior seasons of 74, 75, but still not to even mention Mark Ingram seems like an oversight to me. Well, still to come on TITV, former Alabama running back Glen Coffey was earning a living in the NFL, but it was not fulfilling, and so he's decided to go in a different direction in his life. Coming up, Coffey speaks about calling it quits less than 2 years into his professional career. Tider Insider TV will also take your phone calls and get to your emails. There's the information on the screen that you need to reach us. Give us a call because we've got a lot more to come. Speaking of that, he might be Alabama's quarterback of the future. Tonight, a revealing conversation with the father of Phillip Sims. Jeff Sims talks about how Phillip's been groomed to be a quarterback all his life. Stay tuned. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, Tider Insider TV. Welcome back, everybody. The fall semester is underway at the University of Alabama, and students are flocking to Nukes. 205 University Boulevard East in Tuscaloosa, just up from the UA campus. You should give it a try as well. Open for lunch and dinner 7 days a week, whether it's one of those oven-toasted sandwiches or a California-style pizza, hand-tossed salad. Everything's made with fresh ingredients. It's a great atmosphere. They get the food out to you fast. They got a beer and wine menu as well. Call them for your catering needs, 758-2455. Again, that's Nukes Express Cafe. Don't forget about the dessert menu, cakes, brownies, and Rice Krispie treats. Give them a try. You'll be glad you did. Well, former Alabama running back Glen Coffey was living the dream, playing in the NFL with the potential to earn millions of dollars. But at just 23 and less than 2 years into his pro career, Coffey decided to give it all up. He unexpectedly announced this past Friday that his retirement from the San Francisco 49ers would begin immediately, saying he wants to become a minister. Now, this past weekend on CNN, he explained why he turned his back on football fame and fortune for faith.
It was my dream for a long time, you know, but I found Christ my junior year in college, and ever since then, football was no longer my dream, you know, and I mean, God has a different calling on my life, a different plan, so I had to walk away. if anything, I felt I needed to leave now because if I was a starter in the NFL, I still would have made the same decision. You know, right now, as far as the 49ers are concerned, Frank is the team and the leading running back. And if I was in that situation, say later on down the line, I still would have came to the conclusion that I needed to leave football. So it would have been a worst case if I would have waited. So I decided to do it now.
And Glenn said right now he has no plans to return to pro football at all. Well, coming up, whether it's been destiny, hard work, or a little bit of both, Alabama's Phillip Sims has always had a knack for playing quarterback. Up next, we'll talk to the man who has been at Phillip's side through it all, his father, Jeff. And we'll be taking your phone calls and emails as well. Give us a ring, 205-348-WVUA. That's 348-9882. Or email us at TITV@WVUATV.com. You're watching the show that takes you inside the Crimson Tide, the one, the only Tider Insider TV.